Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It is time for another Devblog season leading into the next major update for War Thunder, and as is tradition, it seems like most of the time we're starting off with a naval vessel. This is the USS Arizona, which of course is a battleship built for the United States Navy in the First World War. This thing is coming in with a bunch of different guns on it, and also a lot of firepower behind it, with of course a lot of armor as well. This will be at the top tier of the game when it comes to naval. It'll be at rank 5 for the Americans, and the Americans have kind of missed out on a bunch of their larger ships, but I'm sure that'll be fixed in the future, especially starting with the Arizona. Another thing to also note is the requirements have been changed to get into the tech squadrons. If you are interested in getting into the tech squadrons and also getting some squadron RP towards your favorite vehicles, make sure to join the Tech Hub Discord. There's a link in the description, and you can have a look at the Tech Hub FAQ and be able to get into the squadrons themselves. Anyway, let's get into the history of the USS Arizona. After the design of the Nevada-class battleship, which was the one before the Arizona design, that also employed the novel all-or-nothing armor scheme, the Navy sought a slightly larger, improved design in order for construction in the fiscal year of 1913. As such, the Bureau of Construction and also Repair came up with a number of sketches to satisfy the Navy's requirements, and in April 1912, the final design of what was to become eventually the Pennsylvania class, which is the class that the Arizona is attached to, was chosen, with further work on refining the design continuing into September. The decision to order the design into construction was met with some political opposition over concerns that the design was too weak and also expensive, but nonetheless, the class was approved for construction, with the USS Pennsylvania being ordered in August 1912 and the Arizona being ordered in March 1913. The USS Arizona was laid down in March of 1914, launched in June 1915, and commissioned into service in October of 1916. Due to oil shortages in Europe at the time, though, the ship didn't take part in hostilities during the First World War, but instead escorted the American President Woodrow Wilson on his trip to Brest for the Paris Peace Conference in 1919. Brest is actually part of Brittany on the northwest area of France, and the Paris Peace Conference was in 1919, and it went alongside other warships. Subsequently, both Arizona and also its sister ship were transferred to the Pacific Fleet, undergoing substantial modernization in 1929 into 1931. Throughout the 1930s, both ships took part in regular fleet exercises. However, during the attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, USS Arizona was sunk following a catastrophic explosion of her 4 magazines after an aerial bomb managed to penetrate the ship's deck. Obviously, Pearl Harbor was a pretty horrific event, and the Arizona, I believe, actually is still in the water there, known as a museum to what happened during that day. So when it comes to the new battleship into the game for America, the USS Arizona, what will it have on top of it to be able to be useful? Well, it has 4 triple-mounted 14-inch guns, or 356mm guns. These ones are going to pack a hell of a punch. If you talk about the overall firepower, 12 at 14 inches is going to be able to do a decent amount of damage. Obviously, one of the issues with these guys is it's going to be the reload rate is not going to be exactly fantastic compared to other machines, but it should have a decent muzzle velocity and therefore be able to penetrate pretty hard, and if you can aim them correctly, make the other ships go pop when you hit their ammo racks. Generally, when it comes to high-tier machines, I've never really had too much of an issue being able to annihilate other machines with it. normally what happens is whoever has the bigger stick ends up winning, which is basically how naval works in general, at least at the higher tiers. And since this American ship, the Arizona, gets quite a few big sticks, that'll be quite nice, even if they aren't the biggest ones. It also has a secondary weapon complement of 12 5-inch guns, or 127 millimeters, which are mounted in casemates on the ship's side, so you'll only really be able to use 6 of them at once if you're broadsiding. And then also it has 8 5-inch cannons located in the weather deck, which aid the ship in defending itself from air attack. So, you know, there's, I suppose, your anti-air defense. It also has 8 50 cal heavy machine guns situated in the platforms. So pretty much this machine does not have a lot of AA defense, especially compared to the size of the machine. In general, what I would say is these larger ships, they're going to have to be super careful with them when it comes to their AA, because the moment that the AA becomes too ridiculous, and it already has on a few machines like the Perizia Communa, and then also you have the Scharnhorst. They're starting to get up there where they're starting to add a lot of these AA to the ships, so their natural counter when it comes to War Thunder is kind of disappearing. But it's nice to see that we're still having some, you know, in the game which will be able to be countered by aircraft. Also, at the same time, when it comes to its armor scheme, we talked about this all or nothing armor scheme before, which basically puts a ton of armor in certain areas of the machine and not others. But it puts the ton of armor in the places where you kind of need it, covering the machinery, so the engines and transmissions and stuff like that, and also the magazines, whereas the rest of the ship is pretty much unprotected. So the armor scheme, the belt ranges from 343 millimeters to 203 millimeters, while the turrets themselves go from 457 millimeters to 228 millimeters. Now, this still won't be enough to stop some rounds in the game, but what it will do is it'll mean it'll have a decent buffer compared to some other machines out there. We'll have to see what its internals look like when it comes to how they're modeled. That normally gives us an indication of how survivable a ship is, because the outer layer of a ship is obviously very important when it comes to its armor values, but also what's important is how the layers are internally, because if you hit these specific layers over and over and over again, then you know, you're going to eventually pierce through, and whatever is behind them matters quite a lot on what you're going to take out. It also has a massive amount of sailors on it, so 1,390. This obviously isn't the most in the game, but it's a pretty sizable amount, and since the amount of crew actually correlates to the survivability of the machine, having more crew is always better. So a decent amount of crew, we'll have to see how it goes. It also seems to have some planes that will be able to launch, so that'll be really nice as well, leading to the new mechanic, which of course is the one where you get to fly around in the hydroplanes, which I think is pretty nice. The actual top speed of the machine isn't great though. 20 knots or 21 knots, basically 38.7 kilometers an hour. So this thing's going to lug around the place, so aircraft will really be able to attack it pretty harshly when it comes to the machine. I don't think it's going to be able to stop many incoming attacks from that point. But the vehicle itself, you know, should be completely fine at the high tiers of the game. What you're basically looking at is a vehicle which has access to just a really nice main armament, has access to good armor. So for me, when I look at this, it'll be a great first spawn vehicle. When it comes to naval, you'll be able to just do a ton of damage to enemy ships with the major guns, and also at the same time the survivability, at least in the main areas where it needs to be survivable, should be pretty nice. As long as the other areas where there aren't too much armor aren't attacked too much, or you know can't be able to propel the amount of damage that's required to survive, you know, from it, then it should be fine as a machine. It should be really fun. And also, it will be interesting to see what other nations get. I like the fact that they're sticking to the First World War era stuff in ships for a little bit. It was really worrying when I saw the Scharnhorst, and when we all saw the Scharnhorst, because I thought that meant that they were going to push forward with way more interwar to World War II designs. But it looks like they're taking a step back once again for America, which is probably a good idea, because as we all know, America eventually will be the best navy in the game, since it is one which has towered over the navies of the world for a very, very long time. So all we have to do is just kind of wait. So adding in these American naval ships, maybe they're not as good as some of the competition, but eventually they definitely will be. So I wouldn't worry about that. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Professor X 1718, Orangetail, Sakoshi Tiger, BRFC 15, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe A, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, and then Kyle Kin, Barine, Lafouche, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.